How's it going, guys? In today's video, I wanted to talk to you about the brand Invicta because I know they really get some hate in the watch community. So I wanted to provide a bit of context, a bit of background on the company, basically how they focus on marketing their watches, and then I'm going to distill it down and actually review one of their most popular watch lines, which is the Invicta Prodiver. This guy right here. And this is a watch I actually purchased for my brother about 3 years ago when I was less experienced in getting into watches. And I think it's important to review the quality of this watch and factor in the price and factor in the fact that it's a straight homage to a Rolex Submariner. So just so you guys are aware, Invicta actually has a fairly long lineage. It was founded back in 1837 by Raphael Picard, and this was back in Switzerland as well. So it was a Swiss-made company, but like many Swiss-made companies, they fell on pretty hard times in the later 1970s when the quartz crisis hit. And that's essentially with the advent of quartz technology, where you can essentially just stick in a battery into a watch, make it very accurate and affordable. A lot of the Swiss brands that had all these mechanical movements were getting pretty hit hard by this advent in technology. And Invicta was no different. But around 1991, they were revitalized. They were purchased by a U.S. investment firm, and that actually moved their headquarters from Switzerland to the U.S. in Hollywood. So you can see how this might actually switch how they market and manufacture their watches moving forward. And in fact, they now actually outsource a lot of their manufacturing to the Far East for their most popular, more fashion-oriented lines. But that being said, you can actually still find some 100% Swiss-made watches on their website. So let's flip perspectives and I'll show you the website really quickly. So I'm just going to flip over to the Invicta page so you guys can see what I'm talking about. You get the reserve line up here. If you scroll over one of their pieces, the first thing I notice is their MSRP of close to 2,500 US dollars for a monstrosity of a watch that comes in with a case size of 53.7 millimeters, powered by a no-name quartz movement, which is kind of surprising. But then if you flip over to Amazon, you can actually purchase this watch for just over 500 Canadian dollars. So again, you can see they marked it up quite a bit on their website. And then look at these reviews. People actually really enjoy this watch, or they're just like sponsored reviews, which I found really interesting, but it does appeal to a lot of people. Then if you flip over to the Glycine website, which again, Invicta purchased Glycine a couple years back, and their Airman line is actually a Swiss icon for pilots. You go with the design cues that they have now, you can see it does mirror Invicta a bit. And then they've also expanded just the pure number of models for the Airman series. If you scroll down, you can even see there's now an Air Woman series, which again, you have that rose gold Michael Kors special fashion design right there. So it's really interesting how they've expanded the marketing to Glycine as well. Okay, so that's a bit of background on Invicta in general. Now, some of their watches are oversized, but that being said, I mean, this Prodiver here, it's a much smaller watch, and I think a pretty decent homage to a Rolex Submariner. And on top of that, if you can actually find some of their vintage watches when they were still fully Swiss-made with Swiss mechanical movements, I think they actually make some pretty nice pieces. But let's flip perspectives, and I'll now give you my full review of the Invicta Prodiver. Okay guys, let's talk about my brother's Invicta Prodiver. I got him the 38mm version of the watch, and it's also two-tone, so you can see the gold accents there on the stainless steel case. And it's the running a quartz Japanese movement. Although you can get an automatic movement for this watch for like an extra $30. And it actually surprisingly runs the Seiko NH35 movement, which is a great workhorse movement, especially at the price point that they would offer it at. So with the other dimensions, again, it's about a 38mm case. From the side here, you're looking at just under 47mm from lug tip to lug tip here. And then you're looking at a case thickness of just under 11 millimeters, including that Cyclops protrusion there. Now the lug gap for the bracelet, or in this case the leather NATO, is 18 millimeters. And I will say that when I purchased this watch for my brother, it did come with a two-toned bracelet, but that got worn down a bit, and then we swapped it out for this leather NATO strap just to dress it up a little more. And I will also say my brother has had this watch for 3 years, and it's in pretty good condition. With respect to power reserve, I've only changed the battery once for him the whole time. And he works in more of a corporate setting near downtown Toronto, and he does get compliments on it. So the design cues here, they definitely are doing something that just appeals to those that, like care about fashion. Now, if you move on this dial, it is kind of a blue sunburst. There's no anti-reflective coating on the crystal, and this is just a mineral crystal, but what can you expect at this price? You can pick these up all day for under $100 Canadian. And again, the automatic versions are only a fraction more than these quartz ones. Now, the applied indices in the handset, being a dive watch, does have lume on it. And I'll throw up a lume shot, but I gotta say the lume is quite poor. It really only shows up on the handset and nowhere else. I even assumed that triangle register with the pearl on the bezel at the 12 o'clock, I thought that would lume up, but I couldn't get it to lume at all. Now you do get an applied Invicta logo at the 12 o'clock position, and then you do see near 6 o'clock it says professional, 200 meters, water resistant, and quartz. Now I actually have a beef with this. I do not know how they can get that 200 meter depth rating. And the reason I question this quite strongly is because of the crown. This is not a screw down crown. Watch, I'll just pull it out. And there, you can see it can hack the movement. The second hand stops, but then it just pushes right in. And there's no threads or anything on the crown. So it's probably going to be the weakest link with respect to water and pressure. So I think you could probably still take this in the pool or in the lake, but definitely wouldn't go diving with it. The bezel itself, the action is decent. It's a little hard to grip the way they scallop the edges of the bezel, but it feels like a 120 click unidirectional bezel. Not a ton of backplay. Sorry if I didn't line that up again perfectly, but the bezel is passable at this price point. Again, you're getting a stainless steel case. You're getting a signed crown with the Invicta logo. And one of the other thing Invicta does is, if you look on the other side, they sign the case, the side of the case as well. Which you can take it or leave it. I'm not a big fan personally, but it's not the worst thing in the world. With respect to finish work, it's not terrible. You can see that you do have some polishing along the sides of the case, and then you kind of have a nice bevel transition into some brushing work on the top of the lugs there. And you can see that the bezel itself's got some different texture to it as well. And I'll just throw this on the wrist so you guys can see how it wears. And there's a wrist shot, guys. So you can see, even though this is like a 38 millimeter watch, I do think it fits well on the wrist. And even with that leather NATO strap that adds a little bit of bulk to it, it wears pretty nice. Let's kind of conclude with some of the pros and cons of this watch. The pro being that it's very affordable, and it is considered more of a fashion piece for sure. You do get, again, some nice finishes on this watch for the price. Decent dimensions as well. It's not one of those Invictas that's, over 50 millimeters and looks like you're wearing a tuna can on your wrist. So that's kind of neat. Some of the cons, again, if you're going to call this a dive watch, I think there are certain aspects of it that really need to be improved. One, the luminescence, for sure. I wish that the grip on the bezel was easier to operate if you want to actually use it as a tool watch. And then the water resistance. I gotta knock this watch for water resistance. 200 meters without a screw down crown, that's kind of misleading in my book. But overall, I mean, if you're just going to be desk diving, which is kind of what my brother does with it, I am kind of impressed with this watch because, again, it's under $100. It's held up remarkably well for a daily and everyday watch on his behalf. But it's just not going to be that tool diver that you expect. Now, before I wrap up here, I will mention something I mentioned earlier in the video, which is Invicta, a couple years ago, they did buy out glycine. So I'm just going to hold up my favorite glycine from that line, and that's the Combat Sub here. Now, the glycine Combat Sub is a true 200 meter dive watch, and the quality's there. It's running a Swiss ETA based movement. And this model of a Combat Sub was actually produced the year before it was bought out by Invicta. But I will say I've owned watches from Glycine pre and post pickup by Invicta, and I think it's kind of helped the brand a bit, like in terms of be getting accessible, because I've seen the price on a lot of the Glycine watches go down when Invicta purchased them up, and I thought this would be a hit in the quality of the watch. But actually comparing them, even their most modern iterations of the Combat Sub and the Airman, I can say that the quality is still there. Again, it is subjective to their type of marketing practices, but overall, I think it would help you get an affordable Glycine if you're just starting off and you want a nice, affordable Swiss watch. So, at the end of the day, guys, really, ultimately it's up to you. I'll just leave you with this. Wear what you like and don't let anyone tell you differently. I know Invicta does get a lot of hate, but if I'm being totally honest, Invicta was kind of like the catalyst to get me more into watches, because I've definitely owned Invicta when I was first starting out, and my watches did hold up pretty well with them. So, I mean, I don't know that deserves all the hate. Now, I can definitely go against its marketing practice in making you think that you're getting just a really good watch for the price. But aside from that, they're not the worst watches in the world. So that about wraps up this video, guys. Please let me know what you think, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.